All right, so we're back here on WrestleRant Radio. I'm Graham Giason Matthews. On the line, we've got an exclusive interview with a former competitor on Gladiators, a former TNA World Heavyweight Champion, the author of the Superstar Body Real World Techniques for Achieving Your Goals, out on Amazon now, first ever and current GFW Global Champion, and the artist formerly known as Magnus, quite the mouthful, Nick Aldis. Nick, how's it going today, buddy?
I'm good. It is quite a mouthful, isn't it, when you break it down like that?
You got quite a lot of things going on, so kind of going off of that, when you introduce yourself to people, how do you introduce yourself? As the former TNA World Champion, I'm the current GFW Global Champion. You got a lot of things going on, so how do you really, what's your kind of go-to line?
Well, when I introduce myself to people, I say, "Hi, I'm Nick. Nice to meet you." But, as far as, like, when I do independent shows, or for example, when I just got back from a tour of Mexico for AAA, and they still built me as Magnus because they just and we're okay with that. Jeff and I have talked about that and said, look, until things start kind of cooking and rolling with global, it's like that's going to be how people know me, and I'm not shying away from that. Like it's not like I'm pretending that it didn't exist. It's And then sometimes I Mick Magnus, all this. Like, it really just depends on what the promoter wants. I'm pretty easygoing with that side of things, to be honest. Like, if I'll just say to you, if you think it's good for business to put me as this and put me as that, you know what I mean? Like, I'm fine with it.
Well, so speaking of GFW, as the first ever GFW Global Champion, which you were crowned only a couple weeks ago, how has your time been with Global Force Wrestling so far?
I can't say enough good stuff about it. It's obviously very embryonic, and I think that maybe one of the easy criticisms, I guess, that Jeff and Global will run into is that there seems to be not much happening, and and I can understand, that might be the impression. I think people have to understand what Jeff's trying to achieve with this. He's not attempting to just start just another company and just start kind of trying to get by. He's really trying to do it right, and that takes a lot of time. And there's the amount, the sheer sort of scale of investment required, today to make a wrestling product that compares, that even compares to what WWE are putting out, or anything of that nature. Is the scale of investment is unbelievable. So, but from a culture standpoint, it's just I've said it many times. I don't have any ill feeling towards TNA or any problems there. Like I just
Mm-hmm.
felt like I just wanted to move on and just try something else, just because I've been there for 6 years and I've been the champion, and I've sort of worked with everybody that was I wanted to work with there, and I just felt like if I was going to stay, then I would just be doing myself a disservice, because I didn't get into the business to shoot for the middle, and so I just decided I wanted to be a free agent, so that opportunities elsewhere could I could know for sure whether I could have one or not, because you never know while you're under contract somewhere. So and just the first guy to pick up the phone was Jeff, and said, I'm doing this.
Mm-hmm.
And I want you on board. And there's a big part of me that enjoys the other area of the business, in terms of the planning and the preparation and I'm not booking or anything like that. I don't
Mm-hmm.
believe in wearing both hats as a talent and anything like that. But
Yeah.
but I enjoy that other side of things, the sort of entrepreneurial side of the business. And obviously Jeff is allowing me in on some of that. So it's nice to feel like a really key part of the team. And obviously, anytime someone gives you, makes you their champion, regardless of the size of the organization, it's a compliment. It's a huge compliment, because it's an endorsement to say, like, we think that this is the guy who can represent us. And for me, I appreciate that, and Jeff has been, for a long time, has been a very strong advocate for me in my career, even, within TNA, when he was still involved there before he was sort of removed from the decision-making process.
Well, what I think it's especially important now in wrestling is to be an alternative, which I think, from WWE, TNA has, NXT has, I mean, it's still part of the WWE brand, but regardless, Lucha Underground, Ring of Honor, now GFW. And GFW, I think, is that kind of alternative. Like you said, not a lot happening right now, but it kind of seems long-term there will be. You have the next-gen division, a lot of things that make it different than any other promotion that's out there right now. So kind of along those lines, Jeff Jarrett himself has said in the past that GFW will kind of create a boom in the wrestling business and kind of be different than everything else that's going on right now. How do you see the company kind of being different from WWE, from TNA, and kind of creating that wrestling boom that Jeff has talked about in the past?
Yeah, well, I don't know if Jeff is necessarily suggesting that he's going to be responsible for a wrestling boom. I think he just anticipates that there's one on the horizon.
Oh, okay.
I think, I can't speak for him, but I think that's more what he's driving at when he said those sort of things. I think that he just anticipates that there's one on the horizon. So he's, looking to obviously, get a piece of that pie. And it is important because I'm as big a fan of WWE as anybody. You know what I mean? I grew up the same as many people my age. Like I'm 29, I just turned 29, and it's like I grew up like many people in my generation with that is wrestling. You know what I mean? That's what we saw, especially in England. But as part of the business, we can't all be at WWE. You know what I mean? You can't all be at WWE at once. Mm-hmm. And there's an unfortunate area of the business, I think, now when it comes to the talent, where there's a huge majority of talent in the business, like upcoming talent, to whom it's like WWE or nothing, and they hinge their entire kind of happiness and success on whether or not they make it to that show, not realizing that at some point it's just a numbers game. There's just not enough spaces for everybody, you know what I mean? And it's like, at some point or other, those opportunities may or may not come for everybody, but you can't waste your life waiting around hoping that that's going to be a thing, because you might miss out on so many other, being a part of so many other great things. And that's, in some ways, that's kind of what I was looking at when I decided to not sign another contract with TNA, because I said, I saw all this cool stuff happening. Lucha Underground is phenomenal. I think it's the best thing that's happened to the business in a long time. And I have friends there, and I've talked to some of the guys there, and I just saw Chavo in Mexico, and it's just so well done, and it's just so different. And that's one thing that can be good. But for me, I think the only thing I'm concerned about is that anyone who's not WWE, they need to really avoid kind of falling out with one another, because WWE has basically has the whole pie. You know what I mean? Like there's like a tiny slice of pie that's now being divided up between a bunch of other people, and which is fine. But if we spend too much time worrying about all the other people trying to get the piece of our pie, then all that's going to happen is WWE's piece is just going to continue to get bigger and bigger. And for me, I think that there's, I'm not suggesting that there needs to be like super shows or like combined things or this and that, but I think that from the talent point of view, the talent need to understand, like, is it really worth me signing a contract with, XYZ? Like, I won't say who, you know what I mean? But it's like, is it really in my best interest to sign a contract here and be exclusive to these people? Or is it in our better interest for us all to be available to, to go and strengthen and make things better and get over? I don't know. I don't have all the answers, but that's like something I'm looking at a lot is going like, there's a lot of companies that are signing guys to contracts, but they don't really have a lot to offer. Like for me, like the reason I didn't resign with TNA was because I just said, like, I know that you can't offer me what I was making before because you're not making that money anymore, and that's fine. Like, I don't resent them for that. That's, you know what I mean? Like, if they had their way, of course they would be. So it's like, but for me, it's like I'm not going to sign a contract that then sort of prohibits me from making money, as opposed to, it enhances it. Like, and that unfortunately is something that I think is happening a little bit at the moment. But certainly, to answer your question about global, I from what I've seen, for what they, in terms of the production and stuff. I think that the style is going to be a lot more kind of sports oriented, in the sense that I'm not suggesting it's not going to be like the AWA kind of pretending that it's real, or also like the sort of those kind of show, like the stuff that was on ESPN. But it's certainly going to be presented more along the lines of somewhere between sort of what the UFC do with those structured interviews, with individual interviews that are then chopped up and put together into packages and situations, and then there's going to be less sort of confrontational situations that can sometimes be a little bit insulting to fans' intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
More of the build is going to happen between two individuals speaking individually, and then having to wait for the confrontation, which to me I think makes perfect sense. And some of they've sent me some of the stuff that they've made, and Kevin Sullivan, not that Kevin Sullivan, by the way, a different Kevin Sullivan. He's the EP for GFW and worked for TNA for a number of years.
Mm-hmm.
Jeff Strahan, man, he's a genius, man. He just makes the most incredible packages with very limited stuff. Like they ask a lot of us to capture as much footage as possible, like working out, being with our family, doing whatever, like anything that sort of defined us as a person, because they want to sort of document good stars rather than make them. Does that make sense? Like they're not telling somebody this is your character, like your name is now so and so, and this is what you do. It's more like documenting who they are and letting that define where the character sort of goes from there. And we it's a hard thing to do, to go like to remind yourself like, oh, maybe I should film this, but we Mickey and I, we captured it. We got a bunch of stuff in the can and sent it over to him, and some of it I would have to say to him like, sorry, this isn't the best quality. Like it's okay, Like I had a decent HD camera, and then I have obviously my phone and stuff. Some of it would be on that, and some would be on my phone. But like then I would see some of these packages they would make with it, and I was just like, this is amazing. This is like really, this is a whole different. It's a game changer. You know what I mean? Like this is like, if this gets all put together properly, the footage from Vegas is fantastic. Like when people see that, I think it's going to be one of those things where a lot of people are going to, like a lot of people who have perhaps been making kind of sideways remarks about, the prospect of GFW. Like I think when they see the stuff that the show that, like the production value of the show at the Orleans in Las Vegas, I think there's something going to be like, oh, okay, shut my mouth, because it's like, to me, I don't think that, obviously apart from WWE, which is, light years ahead, I don't think there's anything in terms of the in-ring stuff, like nothing is shot as well as the global stuff out of Vegas. Mm-hmm.
And that's what makes it different. Like I said, that's what makes you guys an alternative, and people can check that stuff out on the YouTube channel for Global Force Wrestling. But kind of going off that, and this is going to sound like a random jump, but shamelessly plugging your book, The Superstar Body, Real World Techniques for Achieving Your Goals, like I said earlier, out on Amazon right now. So can you give listeners a brief overview, fans of yours from wrestling or otherwise, of what the book's about, and if they aren't already aware of it?
Well, basically, one of the things that happens, I've written a column for FSM for a number of years, like it's going on like 7 years now. And, I always appreciate when fans have come up to me at different signings or fan interaction things, or just at shows or whatever, and said, hey, I read your column, I really enjoy it. I enjoy writing. And obviously after doing it for 7 years, you start to get better at it, and one of the things from through my website and through Twitter and, everything else, the different social media things, I would, quite regularly get asked, workout advice and nutrition advice. And I'm sure I'm not the only one, I'm certainly not the best body in the business, but I'm definitely not the worst either, and it was just one of those things where it started to happen more and more frequently. And then one day, like, I've been thinking about, like, well, maybe I could start writing some stuff down at least, because I've been featured in Muscle Fitness a couple of times and stuff like that, and I thought, well, maybe I'll just start writing some stuff, and then maybe one day I'll be able to do a fitness book, and then we were in New York for an Impact taping one day, and I was like getting ready back there. I think I had some new gears or trying it on or whatever. And Kurt Angle walked in and was just like, and Nick's like, you're always in such good shape. Like, what are you doing right now? And I just went, Kurt Angle is asking me like, what I do. Like, like, I just popped a look at him and went, like, you're asking me? Like, why are you asking me? Like, you're Kurt Angle, you know? And he was like, no, but and I took that as a huge compliment, and that was sort of the final kind of confidence boost I needed as far as, like, maybe I should start writing some stuff. Mm-hmm. So then I did, and got in touch with a publisher who picked it up right away and said, absolutely, we want to do this. The thing that, so basically, it's advice on how to, particularly, I think, honestly, it's probably aimed more at, like, at aspiring pro wrestlers than anything, but it's really, me, I think there's a certain type of body that, like, for most of the time in wrestling, like, there's a lot of guys who I've met over the years who aren't even wrestling fans, or who are, like, very casual wrestling fans, who have said, like, oh, man, like, I don't want to be, like, really, really shredded, or I don't want to be, like, really, really big and jacked, but, like wrestlers always have good bodies. Like, that's what I want to look like. I want to have that, like, big and athletic kind of, like, muscle, but, like, still athletic and, like, still, and lean and blah, blah, blah. And I think that there's a genuine sort of desire through quite a big part of the population that want a physique sort of similar to a lot of ours. So that was basically what I said was, if you want to look like the pros, this is how we train. And it's got, obviously I've written it, I wrote the whole thing, with the exception of, one of the things that makes it unique to me, I think, is that I went and got, I got Kurt, and I got Mickey, and I got Brooke Adams, I got Dwayne Rodejo, who did Gladiator with me, who's an Olympic silver medalist. I got a guy called Nick Ehrlich, who's a trainer who works with a bunch of different NFL players and NBA players and NCAA athletes, like Ben Hebert, who's the CEO of a supplement company. I basically called in a lot of favors and said, will you write a small, passage from my book? So throughout the book, it's not just from me. There's a bunch of advice from a whole bunch of different people who really know what they're talking about. A lot of people who are familiar with, or familiar with sort of British pop culture or with Gladiators. But David McIntosh, who was on Gladiator with me, who then sort of became quite a big tabloid sensation. But mainly just for having a killer body, and dating all these models and all this stuff. But he wrote a bunch of stuff for me, because it was like, how many guys want to look like that? It's like, this is what he does, and one of the things is, it's like, this is the truth. This is what we really do. Not this is like a half truth, or this is like 60-70% of it that's fed out to you sort of slowly by magazines and stuff, because they don't want to give you if a magazine gives you the full information in one issue, like, why have you got to go? What's going to cause you to go back and buy next month? Mm-hmm. So it's like magazines always have this kind of very filtered kind of information, in my opinion, where it's a lot of the time it's like, or it's very contradictory. Like, one month it'll say, like, don't do this, and then the next month it'll say, like, do only this, and it's all very, like, addy and stuff. Whereas this is more like, look, this is what works for me. It may not work for you, but it does work for me, and this is what works for this guy, and this is what works for that girl, and this is what works for this guy. Like, this is the reality of it, and this is why it works, because here's the science behind it. Like, I don't overwhelm you with science, but at the same time, like, you have to understand some of it. Like with things like carbs, for example, people are just, it's really only just starting to filter its way into sort of mainstream information, which is very shocking, because it's like such a necessary thing to know. But people still don't have a clue about what the real implication of it is. And people just suddenly go like, oh, I don't eat carbs, and you go like, you don't eat any carbs? Like, that's dumb. That doesn't make sense. But that's because people just get told like, oh, carbs are bad, and that's it. And it's like, this is, if you understand the process that happens when you eat them, like with your insulin and your, and your insulin resistance or your insulin sensitivity, if you understand that, then you're in control. Like, that's the purpose of the book. It's to put you in control. So it's like, if you want to get bigger, you got to get bigger. You want to get smaller, you want to get leaner, it's all there. And it's in plain English. It's in sort of bite-sized chunks. So I'm very proud of it.
What do you think wrestling fans of yours will get out of reading the book?
I think that it's fairly entertaining, even if you're not necessarily, even if you're not necessarily obsessed with wanting to, have a killer physique. Like it's an interesting, if you're interested in the business and you're interested in the people in the business, then you have to understand that this is a huge part of our lives, is how we take care of ourselves. So reading, for Kurt absolutely gave me a couple of absolute gems for the book, and it's so interesting. I sat down with him, over a couple of sessions, and we talked about Kurt. Kurt gave me all this stuff about his mental preparation, his mental focus. Anybody who knows Kurt knows this guy is like a machine.
Mm-hmm.
He's not. There are certain times where I've been in the ring with Kurt, and there have been times where I've just been thinking holy shit, this is a whole different level of athlete,
Yeah.
even in pro wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
And I got, so I said to him, I want you to tell us about, what's going on in there? You know what I mean? How do you go, what's going on in your head? How do you become that way? You've been an NCAA champion, Olympic gold medalist, and then you've been the top of the business, or certainly considered the best in the business for over a decade. You're a millionaire. You know what I mean? How do you keep? I've seen him in the gym. I've seen him on a treadmill, full incline, just going berserk, for 60 minutes. You know what I mean? I'm just going he does that,
Yeah.
And I'm saying, how do you, that's mental. That's not. He doesn't have, he has one gear, and what he describes as far as what he does, to get himself mentally there was outstanding. It was so interesting, and I was I thought this is so great. And I think even any fan of Kurt Angle could get the book and just enjoy those few pages where he talks about that.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And there's a whole bunch of different stuff like that. Vicky talked at length about how she, got her body back after having a baby, and and there's Brooke, a lot of guys, probably enjoy looking at Brooke's pictures, but they don't understand that she's a horse, man. She's an athlete. That's not an accident.
Mm-hmm.
That didn't just happen. She trains for that, and that's a big element of of a lot of the guys you see on TV, and so. And then from my point of view, obviously, I tell some of it's sort of a little bit biographical. I tell stories about how I sort of first got into training and why and what inspired me. So some of that's fairly autobiographical in that respect. So I guess if you're a fan of me, you'd find that interesting, even if you weren't necessarily huge into physique and stuff. Because
Mm-hmm.
I write a lot of stories about first falling in love with the business and how that sort of in turn gave me a huge passion for fitness and bodybuilding and stuff like that. Overall, I just think I made a point to give it to a whole cross section of people before it went to final proof, and some of them were guys in the business. Some of them were people who just know me and don't know, and that's the only way they know the business, because they're friends with me. And so, sort of going through that whole cross section, and the general feedback was, yeah, it's really easy to read. It doesn't, it's fast. You kind of, you get through it quick, and you can pause it anytime you want. You don't have you don't feel like you have to trudge through a massive chapter. It's fairly well broken down, and it reads really well. It's fun. It's interesting. So I hope that that's what people take away from it.
Well, you mentioned Kurt Angle, too, and you were paired with him in the year of 2013 in TNA as part of the Main Event Mafia, alongside, of course, Sting and Samoa Joe. What was it like being with Sting and Kurt, a part of the Main Event Mafia, and did they handpick you apart to be a part of that group in 2013?
That's why it was awesome. 2013 was really the most fun I ever had. Because it's nice when you. It's a funny thing, when you're on the cusp of being the top guy, if that's what you want to call it. That it's fun because the pressure is off. You don't have you've got all this momentum and everyone's sort of getting behind you, both sort of internally and the fans. Everyone's sort of getting behind you because it's like, oh, cool, like we're going, and once you actually get there, then suddenly, a lot of things change. But that's a different story for another day. But the main event mafia was certainly a very significant part of that, and I remember them just calling me a few days before and saying, like, we need you to go and, they said, like, you have suits. And I said, I have a suit. And they said, well, you might want to go and get a couple more because we're doing an event mafia and you're the fourth guy. Because they'd already been doing the angle, I think. So I don't know I don't know who made that decision or whether, I'm sure that they probably ran it by Sting and Kurt. I don't know if they were the ones who made the decision, but Sting's never done anything except endorse me and speak up for me, so it wouldn't surprise me at all. I mean, the guy, he did the favor for me, clean in the middle of the ring, like with a submission. I mean, clearly Steve was willing to do anything for me to help me in my career, so I'll always be completely indebted to him for that.
And even right before that match, you had that amazing match, and I tweeted you about this before, the match that you had with AJ Styles at Turning Point 2013 in the finals of the Bound for Glory series. Great match. Do you feel like, ironically enough, was it a turning point in your career in TNA?
I think it was a turning point in terms of the fans, like, maybe, because I think there'd always been this bit of a stigma of, like, oh, he's, like, Dixie Carter's favorite, and, he's just sort of had everything handed to him, and he's just, like, he's just spoiled, and, like, he's just a body, you know what I mean? And he's just, like, a lot of guys didn't even realize that I was a wrestler before I got cast in Gladiators. Like, I'd been a full-time wrestler for, like, 2 years by the time I did that, like, but they just assumed I was just some guy who Dick Steve saw on TV and said, oh, give him a job, and I was too green and didn't deserve the spot at first, but worked very, very hard to improve and did improve, like, quick, and picked it up. And, like, I think that by the time it got to that match with AJ, I think it got to the point where people were like, you know what, like, we're going to let this guy off the hook. You know what I mean? Like, he's been around for, like, 5 years or whatever it was at that point, and I'd had a great run in a tag team with Joe, and then had a great feud with Joe. Like, that really was the thing that put me on the map, I think. And then when they just looked at, I was having consistently good matches with everybody, whether it was like Van Damme or like a big giant guy or like an Abyss, or whether it was like a cruiserweight. I was having good matches with everybody, and it was like, by the time it got to the AJ thing, I remember thinking, like, it's funny because I wasn't very confident that I would get a good reaction, because I was like, we were both baby faces, and I was like, oh man, they're going to kill me. I'm going to go out there and, like, everyone's going to cheer for AJ. And it was kind of 60-40. I wouldn't go as far as say it was 50-50, but it was close. And I remember going out there and going, wow, like, there's a bunch of people in this arena that want me to win. That's cool. And after that, and that is my favorite match. It's not the best match I've ever had in TNA. I'd probably have to give that to a match I had with Jeff for a one-night-only pay-per-view. It was a match with Jeff Hardy. I want to say in, like, Roanoke Rapids or something like that. It was a one-night-only pay-per-view. It was just very Jeff, man. But in terms of business, like, that was the best thing I ever did in TNA, because the way that the finish, the story that was told with that match was perfect. AJ deserved to win, and I deserved to almost win. And because if I'd have won, it would have been like everyone would have fired all over, because they would have went, he's just being pushed. You know what I mean? Like, he's just another guy getting pushed, and we don't like it, and AJ deserved to win it. But because AJ won, and we had a hell of a match, and then the way that it was laid out with me, like, sitting on the apron was like, like welling up, you know what I mean? Like, so I like, just kind of had enough of losing, but, didn't believe that I came so close and didn't make it. That was a perfect piece of business. And you know who put that? Jeff Jarrett. Jeff Jarrett put that, and it was not long after that Jeff was, like, removed from the decision decision-making process and stuff, and that was kind of, for me, and it was ironically right around the time I was winning the title.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember thinking even then, like, it's time for me to go. Like, I want out because this is Jeff's the guy who gets it. You know what I mean? And this is like, if you can't see from if you go back and watch like that sort of period from like early to mid 2013 through the end of 2013, how good the show was,
mm-hmm.
and the talent that was being showcased and how it was being showcased, and the way the stories are playing out, and that was all, and that was because Jeff's influence was back, and then he was removed again, and it was like, to me, that was when I said this is wrong, and I want to be with that guy,
mm-hmm.
because that guy, you have to be with the guy who's on your team, but you also have to be with a guy who doesn't have an agenda as far as like playing favorites and isn't gonna. Jeff's been in the business. Yeah, Jeff's been in the business his whole life. He's a third generation guy, and it's like he understands. He knows. He doesn't get boo-boo faced like when one talent isn't like doesn't necessarily understand or agree with like one thing that's going on. He doesn't go, okay, fine, that's it. That's the end of your push. Like, he just sits down and goes, hey, this is where it's going, and this is where it's going to work. Like, trust me. Like it's a long play. It's not just like, oh, we need to pop the ratings, so like we're going to do something else this week. Oh, guess what? Like you're losing the title and you're getting your push taken away. You know what I mean? It's
mm-hmm.
like, and that was like the culture that replaced Jeff, and I just went, it's time for me to move on. Like, I want to be with the wrestling guy.
And then around that time, too, like you said, when you won the title, and we'll talk about the title reign in a second, but the moment itself of winning the championship and becoming the first English-born wrestler in I think it was over a century, in like the early 1900s, in a major American organization to become world heavyweight champion. What was that like? To have that honor bestowed upon you? Because that's something that can never be taken away from you.
Right. And what's funny is I didn't even think about that until afterwards. Because I didn't know until I got there. It wasn't like they laid out this big long thing to me like this. I thought that this is where it was going. And I guess I can tell this story now because it's long ago. It's a lifetime ago at this point. But actually, when Sting and I wrestled at Bound for Glory, the outcome was supposed to be different. And it was Sting who said, no, like, that's not right for business. Like, this is what's right for business, and this is what we're going to do. And, he tapped out for the club release in the middle of the ring. And, like I said, that's the most important moment to me personally, in my career. But something he said afterwards was, I think, even, perhaps even more important, was that he came back
mm-hmm.
and looked at them and said, you just make sure that this means something. Like, do the right thing with this guy.
Mm-hmm.
And that was like, I sort of understood what that meant. But I just continued to just show up and do what I was told. You know what I mean? Like, I just
mm-hmm.
did my job. But I don't know whether that had any influence, but I can imagine that it may have done. But I still didn't know until the day. I knew it was me and Jeff in the final, and I thought, well, Jeff Hardy he's the only guy that draws a house, for us. So I mean, who am I to be upset if they go with him? You know what I mean? Like he's the best. He's the best for business. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I've thanked Jeff for the house before, like legitimately. You hear those old stories about guys thanking Hogan for the house back in the 80s. Like, I did that with Jeff.
Mm-hmm.
Because there were times when it was very obvious to us, like, the only reason there's anybody here is because of that guy. You know what I mean? And,
mm-hmm.
like, my ego is healthy enough to admit that. But when it happened, I just, I just wanted to have, my only focus was having a good match, because it was like, the first time you win the title, if if the match isn't good, then it's like that's not going to happen. It's going to be a terrible start. It has to be a good match. And it was a strange match, with like a cage match, but then you had to go out of the cage and climb the ladder. I thought it was kind of a cool concept. I wish it had a different name.
Yeah, the Dixieland thing. Yeah.
Right. I thought the match, the actual concept of the match was pretty cool. You have to take the cage first, then you have to climb the ladder. I thought that's it's pretty clever.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got a concussion in that match, like very early on. Like I've told this story before, and it's again something that no one knew at the time. And then they were like, "Why are they doing this? Like, why do they keep doing all these run-ins? And why is he not allowed to win by himself?" And
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I had a really horrible concussion, and it was just a freak accident. Jeff didn't hurt me. It was just a freak thing. I just bonked on the top of my head and got a concussion. I didn't know where I was. Like I was just going on autopilot. And Jeff, bless his heart, completely helped me through the whole thing. I've managed. I guess I've watched it back a few times and realized I managed to just sort of still needed to be. I was still where I needed to be most of the time. But obviously that was a big no-no. I came back and I knew instantly there was something really wrong. And Scott D'Amore was there, and he was my agent at the time. So he came in and he took one look at me and went "You're not right, are you?" And everyone was like, "All right, everyone get out of the way, sit down, blah blah." So then that was why things were a little bit. That's why the stuff that we did, after those few days with AJ and everything, were the way they were because I just wasn't in any condition to do anything.
Mm-hmm.
But once all that had I recovered from that after a couple of weeks. Luckily we had a big break, so it was okay. And it was only when I went back to England for Christmas and then leading up to the tour and stuff that I realized what a big deal it was to everyone, because I don't know if I even thought about it, to be honest. I don't even think I even thought I'll be the first Brit. I didn't. I guess maybe because I thought Nigel McGuinness had been Ring of Honor champion. I don't know. I didn't even really think about it.
Mm-hmm.
But then it was there was all these different news things and I guess you could newspapers and stuff going he's the first Brit, to win a major world championship in American history. And yeah, it was. And it is, you're right. There can only be one first, and that's kind of how I feel about the global title too. It's at the moment it's only what we make it. Not it's a huge prestigious thing yet, but it's if it does become one, then I'll forever be known as the first one. And that's again, no one can take that away from you. And that is almost, like I said before about being a champion. It's it's a sort of it's an endorsement. But to see the first one is a really good endorsement, I guess. Because it's if you're the first ever one, then they go, well, this is important.
Mm-hmm.
So it's both of those. In that respect, both of those things make me quite proud. And there's something to be able to look back on one day and go, yeah, that was pretty cool. Not bad.
And also, too, right after that, you had the great match with AJ in September at Turning Point. You beat Sting at Bound for Glory. You win the championship, had the great match with Jeff Hardy. You win the title. And you had great matches with Joe, which was awesome considering your guys' history within the company and the many times you guys held the tag team titles and everything else. But like you said before, or like I mentioned with you became a breakout babyface coming out of that match with AJ Styles, and you were organically over with the audience, and it was great. And this is something that has bothered me forever, but when they turned you heel, and like you said, it was right around the time when Jeff left, so that might have had something to do with it, and you were concussed, so they had the interference in the matches. But even beyond that, though, it just felt like it was the wrong time to turn you. I don't know. I felt like you were catching fire as a babyface, and you were on top of the world, and then they turned you as a champ. And then right after they had you drop the belt, you went back to teaming with Bram, which was cool, but you were never at that level again. They never really pushed you towards that level. So I guess basically, did you feel that the heel turn, because you've always worked great as either a babyface or a heel, but did you feel like the heel turn came at the wrong time in your stint as TNA World Heavyweight Champion?
Yeah, absolutely, and you're not the only person to voice that opinion. And I guess maybe the problem was that I voiced that opinion too, and I thought maybe I guess that now that I was the champion, I was allowed to have an opinion, but I guess John Gaboric had a different idea, so that was fine. You know what I mean? And that was, again, it's their company. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know why there was those things that got put out there that I sort of was difficult that I was being difficult, or to me, I would never say who it was, but everyone in the company knows that it was one guy who was like sabotaging me and sending stuff to the sheets, which is just so sad and pathetic. Like when you really think about it, but it was just one guy who was upset that they didn't go with him, and it's like, and that unfortunately, like TNA always sold for that stuff. You know what I mean? Like they always sold like the stuff on the internet, and it just made me so. It just kind of just infuriated me. The heel turn thing, like that was always going to happen. Like they always wanted me to do that. They actually wanted me to turn heel at Bound for Glory with Sting. And that was, but again, like that was what Sting, said, this is what we're doing, and this is how it's going to go down. Like this is what I want to do because it's the right thing for business. But then they said, okay, well, you'll win the title, but then let's say you'll turn and like sort of sell out or whatever. And I didn't mind it. I quite liked the because I said, well, shit, if everyone thinks that I'm like Dixie's favorite and like I'm, that she's always kind of gone to bat for me or whatever, then we may as well make a storyline out of it. You know what I mean? Like, I understood that. I'm with you in the sense that I felt like it was we could have got 6 months out of me as a babyface first. And when you think about it now, I don't have any regrets. Like, I guess there are times where I wish that I'm sure, like I can accept that I could have communicated a little better instead of. But at the same time, I was still recovering from a concussion, and I was like being like unfairly kind of chastised by like so-called journalists and stuff. And I've had a conversation with Wade Keller actually since then, and I like Wade a lot, and I think he has a great view on the business. But I said to him, like, you were unfair to me because you didn't ask for my side of it. You know what I mean? Like, and that was, that wasn't. I didn't think that was very fair. And you don't understand how many people really care about that belt. You know what I mean? Like, and how they'll do anything to like to sort of to harm another guy. If they think that it will help their thing. But anyway, that's like that is what it is. Like that's the wrestling business. You know what I mean? Like put your big boy pants on. But anyway, the thing for me, like I said, I don't have any regrets. But when I think about it, the one thing like I really wish I don't understand why they had this tournament and I won the title in December in Orlando, Florida, when we were about to go to the UK, and I could have done it in January.
Exactly.
Like,
yeah.
To me, I was like that. And unfortunately, again, like I say, I don't have any ill will towards TNA. Like I didn't enjoy my time as the champion very much there, and I didn't enjoy what happened afterwards because I just felt like it was just petty,
Yeah.
But I still got paid. You know what I mean? And I said, well, you can. But what you're paying me, like, that's up to you what you do. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm going to be here. But anyway, I do, yeah, like, that to me was just like, why don't we have the biggest opportunity here to have, like, to create, like, a really huge moment in the company's sort of history. And it just was missed. And unfortunately, that is it's pretty much like TNA in a nutshell. It's like it's missed opportunities. Like there's so many missed opportunities all the time, and it's because unfortunately there's the culture that exists there of you're a wrestler, like you don't make decisions. Like we're all the guys, all the people, like the writers and the people in the office are so insecure about not being wrestlers that they go out of their way then to deliberately ignore the wrestler's opinion, even though the wrestlers are the biggest marks of all, so like you should really listen to them. It's like there just is this culture that exists of like you get paid to do what we tell you, and we get paid to tell you what to do. So that's how it works. And it was, and it was never like a case of me saying like, this is what we should do. I just go, hey, have we thought about this? Isn't this what we're like? Aren't we in the business of trying to create moments? Isn't this like a prime thing, like staring in the face? Yeah, no, but we need to do it like this. Yeah. But then I came, and so then instead of winning it in Wembley, which could have, if they had had a title match in Wembley where people really thought I could win, they could have sold that place out. Instead, they just, I came out with the heel and did like a heel promo, and to set up a match with Joe that the people then didn't get to see because it was, because it was the tape show for a pay-per-view that happened in Miami.
Yep.
So it's kind of like the biggest live event market they have, and they didn't give them any part of like the world title kind of area. I had one match with Gunner, but again, it was just a whole load of, it was a good match, but it was a whole load of stuff. It was like James turned heel on him and this and that.
Yeah.
But other than that, it was like there was no title defense, so there was nothing except like promos and stuff, and I just went, this is our best market, and I'm a Brit, and I'm the world champion. Like, don't you think we just sort of shit on the people a little bit? Like, we basically just said, hey, you'll come back. Like, you don't deserve it. And I just went, like, these people deserve it the most because they're the ones who are buying tickets. I got to a point where I said, look, I've been there for longer than most of the people in the office, or most of the people who are making decisions. You know what I mean? Like, and I hadn't been there that long. There were talents there that had been there way longer. I was like, I'm allowed to have an opinion, like, because I've been here and I've seen it go up and I've seen it go down. I've seen how things operate here. Like, I'm not going to just continue to be like this, yes sir, no sir. Like, I'll do whatever you tell me. Like, if I have an opinion, like, I'm going to voice it. I'm not going to be a dick about it, but I will tell you what I think is and I will ask to have it explained to me if I'm not sure what, because we're independent contractors. Like, we have a responsibility to look after our own interests. Like, and that, again, it's like a weird thing in wrestling where it's like they want you to be independent contractors, but at the same time they want you to act like employees, like do whatever's asked of you and not ask questions and not have any sort of opinion on how it affects you. But it goes against the culture of being an independent contractor. Like if you're a plumber and somebody at a building site said, hey, we've got like this new housing development we're building and we need you to, put all the plumbing in, but we want you to do it with like this piping. And you went, that's the wrong kind of piping. Like it's going to be a disaster. Like it's going to break, it's going to leak, it's going to be a real mess in 6 months from now, and it's going to make me look bad because then when people in the industry go, well, who was the plumber that did that? They'll say me. And then the people at the building site going, well, we don't care, just do it anyway. You go, no, I'm not doing that because I'm not getting sued. I'm not getting I'm not having my professional reputation, like my integrity, like ruined for this just because you want to do it this way. Like, listen to me. So, and that's kind of that's a bit of a disconnect. And again, like going back to Jeff, that's why I like working with Jeff, because Jeff doesn't do it like that. Jeff sits around and he goes, this is what we want to do. Like, how do you think we get, how would you get there? Or like, this is where we need to get, because ultimately it's leading to this and this. Like, this is the point we need to get to. Like, are you okay with that? Yes. Because ultimately it's like, I don't care about winning and losing. It's never about that. It's about how am I able to, like, how is this going to affect me and my ability to sell tickets or sell merchandise? And Jeff will go, this is where we want the thing to culminate. Like, how do you think we get there? And then between us, and because he surrounds himself with smart people and great talent, it's easy. But it should be easy. You know what I mean? It's logical and it's common sense and it's fun. You know what I mean? It should be fun and it should be easy. And most of the time, the thing should be staring you in the face, like which way to go. It shouldn't be like overcomplicated and and unfortunately, I think there's there's somewhat of a culture that exists in wrestling now because of like writers. That they almost want to make it so that the only ones who can sort of untangle the web that they've created is them, so that they then keep their job. You know what I mean? Because it's like because they realize actually that they're kind of unnecessary. So
yeah.
I don't know. Maybe that's be overanalyzing it.
No, yeah, it definitely makes sense. But also, too, I mean, even before you won the belt a couple years ago, it boggles my mind that before you, there had never been a British-born world champion in any American major organization. Maybe, of course, in Ring of Honor with Desmond, but before that in WWE, TNA. And you've got prime guys. I mean, you have guys like the British Bulldog, William Regal, even most recently Wade Barrett. I mean, these are all WWE guys, but do you feel like there's a reason behind that, or do you feel like that's just kind of happenstance or had never been before a champion? Or, I mean, of course, you can't really get into the mind of like a Vince McMahon or something like that, but has there been like an English guy can't sell as world champion? Like, do you know the reason behind that, or your thoughts on it anyway?
I don't know. I've been asked the question before, and I have never met Vince McMahon. I would love to, for obvious reasons. I don't, and if I did meet him, I would shake his hand and say thank you for putting food on my table, because even though I've never actually taken a paycheck from him, like, he's still the reason that I'm able to make one. You know, like, the business only exists because of Vince. So it's like, and obviously he's a fascinating guy. I'm fascinated by him, and like everybody who's worked for him, I'm always just like asking a million questions. Like, what's he like? It's been inferred to me from time to time that he maybe doesn't necessarily love English guys. I don't know. I feel like that's just one of those things, though. Like there's always different. Guys like Vince McMahon are such enigmas that there's always like a million different sort of folklore kind of stories. You know what I mean? Like, oh, Vince doesn't like people with brown hair. I don't think that's true. I don't know. But I think when you look at like, if you take Davey Boy and Regal as examples, I think that if you just look at the guys who were there with them at the same time, like, that's more of the reason. It certainly wasn't anything to do with them as talent. I mean, Davey Boy was as big a superstar as almost anyone in the WWF at one point. When him and Brett main evented at Wembley, that was. That he was as big a superstar as anybody in wrestling, I thought, really. He was like a cartoon character. But he was sharing the WWF with Ric Flair, Macho Man Randy Savage, Ultimate Warrior. It's like, that's a pretty tall order, you know what I mean? And then with Regal, it's like the same thing. Like, when Regal was in his prime, it's like he's sharing the WWF with Steve Austin and The Rock and Kurt Angle and Triple H, and Regal had an incredible career, and I thought he was a great IC champion. And the thing with the IC belt is that at various points in the business, like, the IC belt was as prestigious as the world belt. So I don't think that. And the very limited conversations I've had with Regal, I don't think that he had ever given it a second thought, and he understands his role. And and then as far as like Wade is concerned, like, I feel like there have been times where I love Stu, like, I've known Stu a long time. We went to the same wrestling school for a while. And he's done, he gets better and better every week, I think, even now, and I just, I just think that it's like, he's so good at filling that role as like that heel, like the heel that's like able to sort of work with anyone and get them over, that it's like he almost doesn't need the title. You know what I mean? Like, which I mean is a huge compliment. Like, he's a character that's so easily usable in so many different scenarios that it's like he's not a guy that you think like, oh, we better give this guy a title run to sort of see if that helps establish him. Like, he's very well established. It might, and the thing, anything can happen, honestly. Like, you just 6 months from now, like, something may happen, or like Stu may get a break, and like, he's just done a movie, right? Like, so, who's to say that movie doesn't end up going over like gangbusters, and suddenly it's like he's a big time celebrity, and before you know it, boom, he's the champion. You know what I mean? There's a million different circumstances at play at all times. So I think that for me, I was coming along at a time where there was a lot of established names in TNA, and everyone had the title quite a few times, and they said, "You need to be someone new," and I was the best candidate. You know, that's it. Like it wasn't like, oh, they were going like, oh, this guy's a superstar. You know, he's gonna put out the seat. Like, you know, I had shown that I was able to have somewhat of a positive impact, especially in the UK, and throughout other parts of Europe, actually. You know, and so that probably helped. And then, like I say, just because they just looked at the landscape and they said, well, this guy, and this guy have all been the champion like X number of times. Like, do we go back to one of these again, or do we try something else? And when they did, you know, that was, to me, I thought that the best thing I took away from all that was the reaction from the sort of wrestling community in the sense they went, that was the right thing to do.
Yeah.
You know, no one said, oh, why is he the champion? You know what I mean? Like, no one, by the time it happened, if they'd have done it sooner, it might have been that way. But by the time they did it, no one was saying, oh, I can't believe they went with him. You know, it was like, yep, that makes sense to me. I understand that. You know, and so that, to me, just was, that showed me that I was obviously doing something right.
And your last match there came with James Storm. I mean, not chronologically because you had a few matches on TV, but your last technical match there was with Storm at Slammiversary, the awesome Last Man Standing match. And you guys had a very good feud too. I mean, putting aside the whole train thing, which I know you've talked about before with Mickey, but the feud itself was very good, and you guys had an amazing match. What were your thoughts in your final match with TNA with James Storm?
I loved it. I knew that you know, I had told, we had had the discussion, I'd been up to the office a couple of weeks ahead of that and basically said, you know, look, I've given this a lot of thought and I know the position you're in financially, and quite honestly, like, I'm ready to just try something else. Like, I'm not saying I can never be back, you know, I'd never say that, it's just a dumb thing to say, but I just don't want to be here right now. I want to be somewhere else. But I also want to, you know, I want to kill it on the way out, you know what I mean? And James, you know, James and I have always had very good chemistry. James is a good performer, you know, he's money on the mic, like just brilliant on the mic, and he and I had, you know, we've had many, many really good matches and verbal exchanges on house shows and, you know, through different times with like Beer Money and the British Invasion and stuff like that, but it had always been with he is the heel and him as the babyface. So it was interesting to do it the other way around, and we had some great stuff coming up. And James is just so, you know, we have the same philosophy when it comes to like the promos and stuff, where it's like we like to have an idea of where we're going, but we're both quick-witted enough to take it where it needs to go based on the people, the same way you do with the match. So, and then, you know, adding Mickey to it, Mickey's such a great performer, especially on the mic too, but it was like we just made so much TV leading up to it, you know. Again, the train angle notwithstanding. But we were just, when it came time to the match, we just said like we didn't know what the outcome was going to be, and obviously James parted ways with TNA as well, so it was like that. It was a very, and in the end, it ended up being a very cool and, you know, almost sort of poignant kind of situation. It was very strange, you know. It was like I'd never been in a situation like that where both of like, you know, everyone had already understood, everyone already knew I was leaving. So it was kind of an emotional kind of week. But then when in the midst of that week, people realized like James was on his way out too. So then it was like, this is, you know, it's crazy. Like the, you know, one of the featured matches on the pay-per-view, and it might be the last time we see him. So we just played up to it. We said, like, what? Like, why would we pretend that that's not the case? Like, it's such a, you know, it's how often do you get a situation like that? We should absolutely use this for the, you know, so that's why I did the promo I did. And it's kind of why we left it the way we did. It was just very, like, we just killed each other. You know, we just did everything. It was just, we wanted it to be like a fight scene in a movie. You know, we wanted it to be like the epic fight scene at the end of the film, where it was like, we'll do everything we can to each other because, like, almost like a mutual understanding of, like, and we were able to play off that very well. I think because we do respect each other. You know what I mean? And it's like James has good ideas. James had some good ideas. I had some good ideas. We put them all together. You know, and we just had a ton of fun. And then, like, the finish, I just loved. Like the double, you know, both having a bottle and both smashing each other in the head. It couldn't have gone any better, you know. Like, because that's one of those things where it's like that's a real make or break sort of spot, you know. Like sometimes you want to, you know, with a finish, sometimes you want to err on the side of caution because it's like, what's the margin for error here? You know, if this doesn't go right, like this could be all of this work is for nothing, you know. And we had that discussion because I forget who threw the idea out there. I want to say maybe it was James, but you know, one of the things we talked about was like, there is margin for error here. Like if this doesn't go right, like if one of the bottles breaks before, or you know, or if it doesn't, the timing isn't right. You know, if we don't get this perfect, like it could be, you know, all of this hard work is just for nothing. But then in the end, we just said, you know what, like that's why we're in this business. You know what I mean? Like let's do it. Like like this, you know, if we're not going to do it now, when are we going to do it? So we said, okay, great, let's do it. And then couldn't have done it any better. The people were so great to us, and you know, and there were some tears afterwards, and they were real because it was like when I made the decision to leave, it was tough, but it was like natural. You know what I mean? Like I knew I wanted to leave, but it doesn't make it any easier. It's like breaking up. You know, it's like a breakup. You know, it's like you know it's the right thing to do, but it still doesn't mean it doesn't hurt. You know what I mean? So then it was, but the one thing I sort of had in mind was like I really hope that I get to do that sort of like a real, you know, I really hope I get to have a good last match. And it's like that's the sort of the full stop on the end of the sentence. Like, you know, that would be the only thing I would have been disappointed about if it had just been like some kind of rubbish, you know, throwaway kind of match. But because it was that, and you know, like you say, like even though we did some stuff that was taped that aired afterwards, I would like to do that, you know, as my last actual thing. It was like I just was very proud. Like if you know, I always remember that. And I have to say this, like for everything that you know, for all the ways that TNA maybe kind of, you know, I don't want to say wrong to me. That's not the right word, but you know, some of the ways they didn't necessarily help me out as much as they could have done, and some of the ways where I felt like they sort of deliberately tried to derail me at times. The fact that they let my last thing on television be, you know, me and Nikki winning, you know, in that mixed tag or whatever. You know, that's a significant thing. There's not many companies that do that let you go out on top. You know, like, you know, and I didn't necessarily want to, you know, and I had said like I want to do business on the way up because I believe in the traditions of the business. And so in that respect, in the match with James, that was kind of why I wanted to do it, because even though James was leaving too, it was like I had already made it clear that I was leaving, and you know, I wanted it to. Regardless of what happened with him, I was like, I want to go out on the back. I mean, what I really wanted to do was do business for Bram, but you know, that opportunity didn't present itself. But when but then when they said we want you to, you know, we want to do this like mixed tag match, we want you guys to win, and that to be like our last sort of vision of you guys is like celebrating in the ring together and stuff. And I was like, that's very cool. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
And speaking of James Storm, both him and Samoa Joe, I mean, they showed up in NXT over the last couple of months. Austin Aries was reportedly backstage, and it kind of seems like 2015 has been the year. I mean, it was never anything official. There was never anything, you know, fans, just speculation. But before this year, it was never really a thing to see TNA guys in WWE. For the most part, I mean, you would see, you know, Awesome Kong came a couple years ago, Vance Archer, Lance Hoyt. So there's been a couple people, but it's like this has been the year with NXT kind of growing. You see people like Samoa Joe, James Storm, who are TNA originals, who were there for 10 years, and they showed up in NXT this year. At 29 years old, you got your whole career ahead of you. Have you ever contemplated or ever been interested, of course, in being in having a run at NXT or WWE?
Of course. I mean, it would be, you know, it would be completely ridiculous to say anything else. I haven't had a ton of contact guys who went to like tryouts and, you know, did extra stuff and everything like that. Just because I got into the fitness at 18 and wrestled full time, like for you know, until I got cast to Gladiators, and then I got picked up by TNA. So it was kind of like it just that side of things never really was never really a part of my career.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, I look at what they're doing and go like, yeah, I mean they're the, you know, that's the show. You know what I mean? And if anyone who's in the business wants to be in the show, but I'm not, you know, I'm not sitting around waiting for the phone to ring. And you know, I've just been down for AAA, and I'm supposed to be going again this weekend, and you know, still hopefully building up a little bit of a good reputation there. And I'd like to do more stuff in Japan. I've only been a few times. You know, we've been doing some stuff in Europe. Like I've had a big part to play in the GFW UK shows, and we've got some more of those coming up on the horizon, like very soon in the spring. So it's like, you know, and obviously, I'm really enjoying being a part of Global Force and like helping. You know,
Mm-hmm.
there's going to be like, you know, Jeff has let me in on some really cool information about, you know, the company, and it's you know, I think in 2016, like it's going to be a different. You know, it's going to be a different landscape. Maybe not necessarily everywhere in the world, but in certain markets, like it's going to be a very different. The landscape's going to look a little different, and if I can play a part in that, then we'll power to it. You know what I mean? And as far as WWE is concerned, it's like I've, you know, had a couple of conversations here and there, and it's been friendly, and that's, you know, and that's as far as it's gone at this point. I don't know. You know, it's such a hard thing to talk about because you don't want to, because everything could be sort of taken so out of context.
Mm-hmm.
And I certainly wouldn't want to disrespect, you know, the guy who's got behind me now, who's paying me today. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
who's trusting me, you know, to be his guy. So, you know, never say never.
And also, too, I mean, the current landscape of the industry, there's probably the best wrestlers as there have ever been from an in-ring standpoint, from WWE, TNA, Global Force, Ring of Honor, Lucha, the whole spiel. Is there anyone on the circuit today that is actively wrestling that you would like to have a match with, or you feel like would have a compelling match with? And I know a lot of people say, oh, John Cena, because he's the guy, but other than maybe John Cena, is there anyone on, you know, in wrestling right now that you feel like you could have, like, I can go out there and have an amazing match with that person?
Oh, gosh. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot. I think the thing for me, I've always really thrived. I always really loved, like you referenced my match with AJ, and then, you know, that was one of my favorite matches, and then matches I had with Jeff Hardy. I like working with guys like that who do like all the crazy kind of high flying stuff and do, you know, and can sell. Like I love to be I like playing cat and mouse. Like I like telling that story, and I like getting more out of those guys than simply like like acrobatics. You know, like I like to, you know, create emotion through them by sort of having my way with them, and then when they letting them kind of have this huge comeback and, you know, and creating that drama. That's my favorite thing to do in the business. So with that in mind, like I guess I would love to I'd love to work with like Ricochet, Don Morrison, gosh, so many of the guys in New Japan, like I guess Nakamura. You know, he's one of my favorite wrestlers. I think there's a guy, there's Willie Mack. You know, like I was just down in Mexico with him, and I joked. I go, look at him and go, like, yeah, you're my favorite wrestler right now. And he's like, yeah, shut up, man. No, I'm serious. He's one of my favorite wrestlers. Like,
He's great.
Yeah, there's tons. I just, you know, Mike Skell's one of my best friends. Like we grew up together in the business, and you know, we wrestled each other a bunch like back in the day when we were both shit. You know, but now it's like I wrestled him in the main event on one of the GFW UK shows that were sold out, and we had a doozy, and it was so easy. I was like, I'd like, well, I'll do more of that, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And he's gonna blow up in the next couple of years, like for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And Zack Sabre, like I know a lot of guys are talking about him now. Like I've known Zack for a long time too, but we've never actually wrestled. You know, that would be cool. You know, there's no end to guys, and obviously all kinds of guys in WWE again, like Finn Balor. You know, I've known Fergal for quite some time, but again, never wrestled each other because we were just never in the same place. You know, but that would, you know, he's so damn good, and you know, and because of his gimmick now, it's like now he's not only is he really good, but now he's like really over. So like that's what you want. If you want a guy that's why I love working with Jeff Hardy, because Jeff's so good, but he's also so over. You know, so that makes your job so easy, and it gives you all the stuff to do artistically that, you know, that's what you get into the business for, is to mess with people's emotions.
And last question for you. In addition to being an author now, you're a wrestler, you've been on Gladiators, you've done a whole bunch of things over the course of your career, only at the age of 29. Are there any other endeavors or avenues that you wish to explore in the future?
Many, you know, certainly more. Now that I'm a father, I think that I'm starting to look more and more at things on an entrepreneurial level where I'm in control. You know, where I'm not necessarily always at the mercy of, you know, of someone's pencil in the wrestling business. You know, or at the mercy of a television deal, or you know, stuff like that, which is always good. You know, which is always the risk anyone in the entertainment business runs. But the book, you know, the book is obviously any of my spare time I'm using to promote that and help that, and hopefully use that to maybe springboard into some other avenues in that realm. And then from within the business, like outside of obviously, you know, continuing to excel in my career, I'm like I said, I've had a hand in promoting and booking the UK live events for Bug the Force, and Jeff sort of allowed me to do that, which has been really fun. And you know, I'm working with a really good business partner over there. Like we're all working together, Jeff and him and I, and you know, on the UK stuff, which has been really great. And it's like the whole different avenue, like, you know, talking to sponsors, and venues, and all that kind of stuff. It's fun. You know, I enjoy that side of things, and it's nice for me to be able to sort of give opportunities to some of the younger Brits coming up now. Like, we brought Trevor Lee over for the UK shows, and it was supposed to wrestle Andrew Everett, who's phenomenal, but Andrew got hurt a couple of nights before. So I ended up giving a chance to a guy called Tyler Bate, who that kid's going to really work that day. He's 18, and he brought the house down. Like him and his brother just brought the house down to an incredible match. And he's 18 years old now. Just like I was so glad that I gave him the chance, because I was like, guys, this guy's gonna be a friggin' star. You know, this is amazing. You know, it's like, and that's a cool feeling. You know, to be able to, like, even at 29, like to have this 18-year-old kid come back through and be like, thank you so much, like, for the opportunity, and you know what I mean. And I'm standing there going like, good job, kid. You know what I mean? So weird, you know, because like I feel like the kids still, but like that, you know, that's a rewarding feeling. I get a lot of gratification out of that.
So like I said, you guys can check out Global Force Wrestling. You can check out their tapings, and whether they're coming towards you, check out the website, the YouTube channel, and as I mentioned before, the Superstar Body real-world techniques for achieving your goals, available right now on Amazon. Nick, thanks so much for your time, man. I appreciate it. Oh no, go ahead. Anything else you'd like to plug? Go right ahead.
For the books, you can go to superstarbodybook.com, where you can it'll have all the different avenues where you can download it or buy it, and in fact, I even have some signed copies on sale there on the website. So.
Oh, perfect. Okay, cool. Anything else you'd like to plug?
Oh, that's it.
That's it. Check out the book, guys. It's on Amazon, on the website as well. A lot of different places to download it. Like I said, you guys can check him out on Global Force Wrestling, the current GFW Global Champion. Got a lot of stuff going on. So, like I said, Nick, thanks so much for your time. I appreciate it, man.
Thank you. I appreciate it.